point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 516th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and the amazing, invisible Tom Fennell.
In the flesh, but not in the studio.
Not in the studio. Okay, this week we're recording on the 30th of March, and we're talking about news that came up on Thursday, the 23rd of March until Wednesday, the 29th of March.
Corresponds with my notes.
That is what it's all about. I'm glad we're in agreement on this. We have, well, you say what you say, Tom.
When do I say it?
When do you say it? You talk about articles being worth reading?
Oh, yeah, they are, definitely. These articles are with a very short summary of them, but some of them are very well worth reading. There are links there, and
yeah,
if you've got the time to read some of them, because some of them are lengthy,
yeah,
go for it.
I should actually say this material is all found at my blog, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com. You can go there, click on the calendar to go to the date, and at each date you'll see 10 to 15 items, usually 15, but if you're looking for something in particular, you can find it there. Also,
so if you click on it, you'll be directed to the original article.
That's right. And then also you can go down on the screen and find the link to the script that we use for the show, and also a downloadable copy of that you can have on your own computer, which has the live links so that you can go and read these articles for yourself.
I think I'm looking at that very thing right now.
Well, by golly. Okay, we're starting on the 23rd of March, which is a Thursday, with an item from Renew Economy.
There's a picture of some solar panels.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Let me put it up so people can actually see it. There we go. Solar panels. What do you got for
solar and wind power solar and wind power through energy crisis to chart record renewables growth.
Right. Defying a global energy crisis and supply chain issues, global renewable energy capacity soared in 2022, growing by 295 gigawatts. And Tom, could you explain to people what gigawatts are?
Bigawatts.
They're bigawatts. 1 gigawatt is about the output of one largish, not huge, but one largish nuclear reactor. So this is the equivalent of about 295 nuclear reactors, except for one thing, and that is the capacity factor for nuclear is about 90% in the United States, about 80% elsewhere. Capacity factor for renewables is about 35%. So, this is the equivalent, actually, of the capacity output of about 100 nuclear reactors. So
I got a little comment. It just annoys me.
What's that?
Well, they said 295 gigawatts or 9.6%. Why don't they just say 300 gigawatts or 10%?
Yeah, why not? Anyway, 295 gigawatts or 9.6% to reach 3,372 gigawatts. The renewable energy growth continues to be at record levels despite global uncertainties. One other thing that I should mention is we don't need 295 gigawatts of growth, which is the record that we had last year. We need 1,000 gigawatts of growth. We need 3 times plus the amount that we're getting. So,
fossil fuels are, they're fossils.
Yeah, that's right. And we need to get off of them as fast as we possibly can. We've
And
got,
it's the money, stupid. It's
Yeah.
the economics, stupid.
we've got a problem, and we've got to deal with it. So we've got to be real about it. Okay, should we go on?
Can't dance.
Okay, we have a picture of a KLM airplane taking off at, believe it or not, that is not Schiphol, that is Schiphol.
People. Okay, I can buy
Schiphol.
that.
It means it's Dutch, meaning a marsh where you can cut wood. And I don't see the marsh and I don't see the wood. It's kind of like the name Churchill. You don't see the church and you don't see the hill. Okay, this is from CNN.
One of Europe's busiest airports to be forced to cut flights due to planet-warming carbon pollution.
Yeah, Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam, one of Europe's busiest aviation hubs, is to be forced to limit the number of international flights and passengers under the Dutch government's plan to reduce carbon emissions. The move has triggered airline concerns.
Yeah.
They're upset.
I would say.
Yeah. So, do you have more on that, Tom?
No, I really don't.
Okay.
It's from CNN. That's the only thing I can tell you.
Okay. Should we go on to the next item?
Can't dance.
We
Got
ha-
a nice picture of Mount Blanc.
We have a picture of Mount Blanc, although I think it's not pronounced Mont Blanc in French because they tend to drop those letters off. It's probably Mount Blanc.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
It isn't Mont Blanc.
No, it's not Mount Blanc. Beautiful mountain. This is from the BBC.
How climate change is reshaping the Alps.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is not a joke. This is real. A mountain in the French Alps is the site of one of the most unusual natural laboratories in the world. Scientists are using instruments set up on it to monitor permafrost on the rock walls. The walls of this mountain have permafrost. The ice in the mountain walls doesn't melt.
It melts.
In the European Alps, more permafrost is thawing each year, and this threatens the mountains themselves.
Yeah.
So,
You're talking collapse, aren't you?
well, you know, the sides of the mountains kind of fall off. That's kind of it's not something that you want to be around particularly. It's one of those things.
Unstable.
What's that?
Makes them unstable.
They are unstable, and that's what this article is all about. And they talk about this laboratory, and the laboratory has got connections to the mountains, and they have to go up and rappel down the side of the mountain with all kinds of gear in order to make sure that the laboratory is not going to be compromised by climate change.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So we're up to Friday, March 24th. And
Are you ready for this?
yeah, kelp. I was a little bit I was curious about this because is that really kelp is regarded as a brown plant. This is obviously green, but it looks like kelp.
It's kind of greenish. It's kind of greenish brown.
Yeah, but I don't see the little air bladders that are on kelp.
That's a different kind of seaweed. Different kind of kelp.
Okay, all right.
That's bladder kelp.
Okay. Thank you for telling me. I didn't know. This is from the BBC.
The promise of kelp-powered flight. Wow.
We were just looking at an airplane taking off, and now we're talking about this stuff making fuel. Catriona McLeod, deputy head of the Fisheries and Aquaculture Center at the University of Tasmania's Institute for Marine and Antarctic Studies, and I'm not going to say that again, in Australia, describes seaweed as, quote, the Swiss Army knife, end quote, of tools to tackle planetary challenges. We're going to get back to seaweed, but a different kind. Already used for food, and if you've eaten sushi, you've probably eaten some of this stuff. It could eventually power airplanes.
Well, it's not a bad tasting food. I mean, we could use it in salad.
Absolutely.
Right now, it's principally used as cattle feed, but I think humans would like it.
When I go down to the co-op, every once in a while, I buy a container of kelp salad. It's not my favorite. It's kind of nice in its way. It definitely has a kind of a seaweed flavor.
I'm just going to say a little salty, isn't it?
A little bit, and it's also kind of tough and sticks between my teeth, and I hate it. Actually, I don't hate it. I really enjoy eating it, but it does stick between my teeth, and so I don't eat it terribly often. It's used a lot for wrapping sushi and so forth. So, you got more to say about that, Tom?
No, let's move on.
Okay. I really enjoyed this image. I'm going to put it up so people can see it.
Green power over a green field.
And it's an Enel green power image, which happens to be in black and white. Everything's green except the picture.
Enel's a big company. You never heard much about them, but they're very large.
They're very large. They operate all over the world. And am I correct, Tom, that they're Italian? I think they are.
I don't know.
This is from Renews. What do you have for a title?
Enel turns sod on 170 megawatt Italian I can't even say it.
Agrivoltaic.
Agrivoltaic.
There you go. Enel Green Power has kicked off construction of a 170 megawatt agrivoltaic solar project. The developer said not only will it be the biggest agrivoltaic plant in Italy, it will be the biggest solar plant in Italy. It will be integrated with the agricultural sector in Tarquini. You were having trouble saying things. I'll bet you can say this easily. Tarquinia, in the province of Viterbo Latium.
Great.
Okay.
I would correct Latium. It's probably Latium.
Oh, okay. I will. The Italians have a very different way of pronouncing things.
They do.
I had a classmate when I was in college whose name was Galliano, which is spelled Gagliano, and the teacher always wanted to call him Gagliano, and it drove him crazy. Very nice fellow.
The G. You don't pronounce the G.
You don't not when it's followed by an L. And you have CH meaning one thing.
Two L's.
CC means another thing. C means a third thing. I'll tell you something though. It makes sense if you know how to do it. It's what's called
It does.
rational pronunciation.
It's phonetic.
It's phonetic, unlike English, which is horrible. One of my favorite sentences in Welsh is "Pwy ydi hwnnw," which means "Who is that guy?" And the reason I like it so much is because of the way the words are spelled. Pwy, which means who, is P-W-Y. Ydi, which means is Y-D-Y. And hwnnw, which means that guy, is H-W-N-N-W. So you got an entire sentence, and there's not a single letter in it that looks to an English speaker's eye.
Someone who's familiar with it would not recognize that at all.
Yeah, and it's Welsh is a very, very rational pronunciation. It's just that it's got a few letters that English doesn't have, or it uses them a few different ways. It has 33 letters in the alphabet? I forget.
I don't know. I wouldn't know.
I could recite the alphabet, but And then you got Catherine Zeta-Jones. I got news for you. She's Welsh, and the Welsh language does not have a J, despite the fact that Jones is one of the most common names. And it also doesn't have a Z. So how does she get Zeta-Jones? Anyway, we should go on.
I just wanted to mention, this is agrivoltaics. And this makes an awful lot of sense.
Oh yeah, they're growing plants.
Just planting something under the panels.
Yeah, they're growing plants under the panels. And I didn't see in the article what those plants are going to be. But did you, Tom?
I didn't see it all, but these panels are pretty high off the ground, so they could be big. They could be tall plants.
You know, I talked to a woman who is a gardener and really intent gardener, and I told her about tomatoes doing a lot better when they were under PV panels.
Yeah,
she said she wasn't surprised at all because they're understory plants. They like a certain amount of shade.
Right, shade. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Our next item. Our next item is from NASDAQ, and since it
looks like it's from NASDAQ, yes.
Yeah, and since it's in Spain and it has to do with solar power, I decided I'd put up an interesting picture of solar.
Yes, it is an interesting picture.
Yeah,
Explain to us what it is.
This is concentrating solar power, where what looks
those
like
things are mirrors, they're not panels.
That's right, and I noticed that they're oriented two different ways, which makes me think that there was probably another one of these towers behind the person who took the picture. But you can.
That answers a question I had because they're not pointing at the tower.
And you notice that there is light coming up on the right side of that tower, and if we saw that tower where the light is hitting it, we'd probably see that it's glowing because it's hot. So, as I said, this is from NASDAQ. What do you have for a title?
Spain's grid operator sees renewables reaching 50% of power generation in 2023.
Yeah, Spain's electricity grid operator, Red Electrica, said that renewable energy sources could account for half of the country's annual power generation this year, up from 42%. That's a lot of growth in 2022.
It's moving towards 100%.
Yeah. The estimate was announced during the presentation of Red Electrica's annual reports. And I don't know how Red Electrica is supposed to be pronounced, to tell you the truth, because I don't speak Spanish. I wish I did.
I think that's awful close to the truth.
Yeah, okay.
It would be Raid, probably.
Okay. Should we...
Electrica's Electrica.
Yeah. Should we move on?
Can't dance.
We're up to Saturday, March 25th, and we have a picture now of pollution.
That's what it looks like.
It sure does. This is from Clean Technica.
Researchers suggest prosecuting fossil fuel companies for climate homicide.
This is not a joke.
That's an interesting concept.
Yeah, it's not a joke. Two researchers are suggesting that fossil fuel companies should be prosecuted for climate homicide. They have laid out their case in an article that was accepted for publication in the Harvard Environmental Law Review. This is not a joke. The paper is titled Climate Homicide. And you know, that's something that doesn't surprise me. I've been kind of expecting this to happen. One of the things...
It's kind of logical, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And one of the things that I expect may happen out in this also is that the climate homicide might not just be charged against the companies, it might be charged against the people running the companies. So
that's significant, because if they charge the companies, nobody goes to jail, but these guys, they're vulnerable.
Yeah, I've thought that companies should have a penalty that is equivalent to going to jail.
Yes.
Such as all of their profits go into other things until the jail term is over.
That's an interesting concept.
Yeah, that's one thing. And then
they stand up and take notice then.
Yeah, and then if for climate homicide, if it turns out that it's a capital offense, the company goes out of business. Actually, it doesn't go out of business so much as its owners lose ownership of the company altogether.
Okay.
And the company can go on and do business, but
they got to have different owners.
With different owners. And that would keep the people working for the company employed. It would keep the products that the company makes still available. But anyway.
But the owners would stand up and take notice.
Yeah, I think people would notice that. Yes. You know, I mean, I'm some of the news that I saw this week had me thinking human beings are really nuts. And anyway, our next item is from Clean Technica. Should we look at that?
It looks like a picture of a bus to me.
Yeah, up on Jack's.
And what are they doing?
Well, what are they doing? They're converting the bus to electric.
Which is very logical. I mean, there's plenty of room for batteries in a bus.
Actually, you know, this article tells you about how logical it is. What do you have for a title?
What, electric school buses?
No, the title for the article.
Huh?
The title for the article.
I was reading it.
Oh, okay.
What, electric school buses? Been waitlisted? Consider it a repower.
Okay, I have a different. Oh, I'm sorry, Tom. I have made a mistake, and here I'm saying that you don't
Eat
know.
your breast.
Huh?
Eat your breast.
I will do that, but I won't do it on television. Many school districts are having trouble complying with laws requiring them to electrify. Laws have been passed in states and ordinances in towns and so forth saying that the school buses have to be electric. Because the wait for school buses is so long, they're just having trouble complying. There are alternatives, and one is to convert the bus that you already have. Complete Coachworks has converted 65 buses to electric since 2015, and they have logged over 3 million repowered miles.
That would be an easy conversion because, as I already said, there's plenty of room for batteries.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. So here we go. I'm going to move us
right along.
What? Yeah, we're moving right along.
Who's in this guy?
Who is this guy? Well, let me put it up so people can see, and then they can tell us. They don't need to.
Gavin Newsom.
That is Gavin Newsom, who is the governor of California, and the picture is courtesy of the office of the governor of California. This is from CNN.
And as it says, California Governor Newsom rolls back some drought restrictions, heaps others, as recent storms ease the dry spell.
Yeah. California Governor Gavin Newsom announced the removal of some of the drought restrictions while keeping others to bolster the water supply for vulnerable communities and develop water resilience after a parade of atmospheric rivers. And, you know, this is good news, but there is some bad news. And the bad news is the farm fields in the Central Valley of California, which had been suffering from just unbelievable drought, all of a sudden were put underwater.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. So the farmers who could not grow anything because they had...
Because it was too dry. Now they can't grow anything because it's too wet.
Yes, that's right.
Wow.
So there are problems with this. But the drought has been relieved to an extent. And I'll tell you, if I were in charge of California, I'd have people out in the countryside figuring out how to control the water, because there are ways to do it. And you know, every once in a while, I think about reading about a monastery in Sinai, where all of the water that they had in the monastery, which had monks, but it also had local people involved, all of the water came from rainfall.
Is that so? In
Sinai. In Sinai, which
anyhow.
is rather dry. They could go for months at a time with no rain, but they had cisterns that were big enough to supply them with the water they needed. And we need to think like that, I think. Okay, we're up to Sunday, March 26th, and we have a picture of rural India.
Looks like rural India to me. Those look like the Himalayas behind it.
Ah, man, I have no idea what that is behind there, but I can tell you, the farm fields are flat. Okay, this is from a publication called Greater Kashmir, and Kashmir is in the very most northern part of India. A lot of it is subject to question of who owns it, whether it's Indian or Pakistani.
Yep, they're still
Yeah, and it has rugged mountains, and this is Greater Kashmir, so
Those are not the Himalayas.
they may, I don't know. Well, Kashmir is Himalayas. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, what do you have for title?
Over 400 million Indians to suffer because of climate-triggered calamities.
Oh, man. As the 2023 IPCC report was released last week, or this week, at the time this was published, experts began warning that a huge crisis related to climate change could affect over 400 million Indias, and how India remains unprepared to tackle even a fraction of the problem of global warming.
That's not good news.
No, it's not. And there's plenty
That's
of...
a lot of people.
Well, 400 million is there. This is 400 million people out of the population of India. It's about 40% in an area that's only a third of the size of the United States, or less. I think it's less than a third, and the population is significantly larger than the population of the United States, and that's when I say the population, I'm saying the people who are going to be, who are expected to be in serious trouble. There's more of them than there are people altogether in the United States, and we are going to have people in trouble.
Anonymous.
What's that?
A lot of the people are anonymous. Nobody even knows they exist.
Yeah, it's very sad. Okay, we should keep going on, Tom. We can.
We got a very interesting device there.
Yeah, we have an interesting device called a RivGen, and this is from the Maine Monitor. And Maine is M-A-I-N-E, that is the state in New England.
They would make sense in the Connecticut River right next to us.
I don't think so. I think this requires water that's moving faster. You see the way the wake in this is. I think that water is moving a good deal faster than the Connecticut River.
Connecticut River moves pretty fast.
Does it? Okay. Maybe, I don't know. What do you have for title?
Company to begin testing tidal systems again.
Yes, after being dormant in its tidal power operations in the Cobscook Bay area of Maine for a decade, Ocean Renewable Power Company is gearing up again to begin testing commercially viable turbine generator units off Eastport this year. The test will start with a single turbine. And there is the single turbine.
Well, this is an interesting concept because there's a lot of rivers in the United States which support something exactly right.
I believe you're exactly right. And I know that machines that are similar to this have been used in Alaska in places where it makes sense. I don't know what they do about cold winters, but yeah, this makes sense.
Well, you got moving water.
Yeah.
And that's free electricity if you're looking at it that way.
Yes, it is. Okay, we have another picture.
Looks like a bunch of batteries to me.
You know what, Tom? You took the words right out of my mouth. It is a bunch of batteries. And they're not...
energy to build new battery plant in Arizona.
Yeah, and the important thing is a battery plant in Arizona, and it's, we're starting to, well, okay, let me read the synopsis. The Inflation Reduction Act has encouraged battery manufacturers to move to the United States. So it should be no surprise that LG Energy Solution is investing in a new battery manufacturing complex in Arizona. It is a significant development in the domestic battery production industry.
Well, the president has made it easier or made it desirable to do things within the United States.
Absolutely. So,
which is a good thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Okay, we're up to Monday, March 27th, and we have a picture here of tourists watching the other guys.
Who are tourists and who are the other guys?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think the Gen 2 penguins are standing there saying, "Hey, Sam, look at those guys. They're in a boat. Who ever heard of it?" Okay, we have...
As Antarctica's penguins struggle with record low sea ice, one species is adapting.
Yes.
It offers lessons to us all.
Yes. While Adelie and chinstrap penguins are stuck in their ancient ways, the much more flexible Gen 2 penguins, the picture has two Gen 2 penguins in it, are just ranging farther south. And as they show willingness to abandon a nest or chase new prey, their numbers are exploding. And did you notice how the numbers were exploding, Tom?
I didn't.
Okay. I read this and I thought, this is not a good thing. They're heading for trouble. Their population is up 30,000%.
It doesn't go that high.
What's that?
Percentages don't go that high.
Well, you know, I read that and I thought, maybe you're right, Tom. Maybe that's really not a correct representation. But nevertheless, these guys are in the middle of a population explosion that is just unbelievable. And what they're doing is they're moving to areas where there's an enormous amount of food for them, and there's no competition from other penguins or animals that are around. So they've got a really abundant supply of food. And
there's an island down there that's populated almost entirely by penguins.
Yeah, well, I don't know what percentage of land animals in Antarctica is penguins, but it's going to be pretty high. There's seals, and I don't know what all else. There are various types of birds that prey on the penguins, but yeah. So do you have more on that?
Let's move on.
Okay, we have an article from CNN. This is a really, I think, an interesting concept.
Floating homes.
In Amsterdam. Yeah.
As flooding increases, these cities are designed to work with, not against the water.
Yep. With a
way long time ago, we talked about something very much like this.
Yes,
floating.
and we're seeing more of it. With the climate crisis threatening cities, some are trying a different way to protect themselves from rising sea levels. Well, one way to do that is to have your house float. These vulnerable urban areas are looking with rather than against, are looking to work with rather than against the water. There are many ways to accomplish this. The idea of having homes that float, of course, as the sea level rises, the homes
go up and down.
Just goes up with the sea. And a person in a thing like this is going to be unaware of the fact that the sea level has risen unless he's in a place where he can see things that are happening on land.
Well, we just talked about Venice, where the houses don't go up and down and they have to rebuild the fronts of the houses.
Yeah. And you know what that reminds me of, Tom? I write novellas, as you probably know. And
yeah.
the recent novella, the one that I'm working on now, has a guy who goes to school in a seminary, Chicago Theological Seminary, and his first time through that area, Chicago, is in like 1858, and at the time that he goes through, and this was something that I didn't plan, but I always do research from the books that I write. As he's going through, he spends the night in Chicago, and they actually had buildings made of masonry that they were raising so they could raise the streets by 6 feet to get them higher than Lake Michigan. This was in Chicago. And they jacked these buildings up. I'm talking about buildings made of stone. They jacked them up. In some cases, they used as many as 16,000 jacks to jack up a building. But the buildings were still in use. So hotels had guests in them, and the hotel was being raised at the same time. I don't think they would do that today. I have a feeling the building inspectors would say, no, you can't do that. That's not going to be allowed. But yeah, and you know, the types of things, they needed to do that so they could have a sewer system that would work.
Yeah.
So, you know, and in this article, there are a bunch of different things that a bunch of different cities are doing in order to make sure that they are going to be able to function properly in the future with the rising seas. So, there you
Well,
have
we've
it.
discussed various aspects of that several times.
Oh, we have indeed. And it's something that I enjoy looking at because it's a difficult problem and people are actually working on it. Okay, our next item, let me scroll to the next item. Oh yes, we have we have an item from a publication called motorbiscuit.com.
After you read it, you eat it.
Yeah, well, maybe that's what it is. Yeah, go ahead, Tom. What's the title?
The Chevy Bolt EV is on the verge of overtaking the Ford Mustang Mach-E. They don't compete with each other. It's
No,
just,
they don't. They're not in competition with each other.
it's just numbers.
Yeah, this is Chevy Bolt that you're seeing on the screen.
Oh, there's no grill.
Yeah, there's no grill. I knew you were going to say that, Tom. I knew the moment I put that picture in. The Chevy Bolt EUV, this means that it's an SUV that runs with E. You know, I don't know. Okay.
Electric vehicle.
I know it is. But it makes a strange rival for the Ford Mustang Mach-E. The Bolt EUV can't compete with the Mustang in performance. They are not, you know, the Mustang would be through the race and
Well, that's a performance car.
yeah, it's a performance car, and the Chevy Bolt would be just getting off the starting line. They are not rivals for speed records. However, the Bolt EUV is about to take over the Mach-E in sales. And when
Well, the Bolt is their lowest priced EV, isn't it?
yes, I believe that's the case. And what they're talking about overtaking is not the value of the sales. What they're talking about when they say overtaking
The number of cars.
is the number of cars. And that's really kind of understandable. Okay, we're up to Tuesday, March 28th, and we have a picture.
What is that thing?
That's
Looks
a
like
coccolithophore. That is a coccolithophore. And I can tell you about coccolithophores if you want to know.
At least you know how to pronounce it.
Well, the other thing is these things are really significant, and they're very important. Why don't you read the title of the article?
I will, and then you can explain a little bit more about what they are.
Yeah.
This algae phoenix rises. The algae phoenix rises biofuel down, concrete up.
Yeah. Can you make any sense out of that? Absolutely not. I'm sorry. I just copied that. That came out of Clean Technica. To the surprise of no one, ExxonMobil finally canceled its long-running algae biofuel research program earlier this year. Okay, that's one thing. The University of Colorado at Boulder emerged as a hotspot for zero-emissions concrete research based on algae. That is an algae cell, a single cell of algae, working with an organism called a coccolithophore.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to leave that up. This makes it look like this algae is kind of medium to dark gray. In fact, my suspicion is that it's really white.
Uh-huh.
And they made it that gray tone in order to differentiate it from the background. Now, the reason I suspect that it's white is that those plates that are on that are basically chalk. And they are on the algal cell, which is a sphere of a single-celled sphere. These things are very small, basically to protect the algal cell. And
those things that look like buttons protect what's really there.
Yeah, that's right. And I saw a picture of one of these things being attacked by a virus. And, it starts to make sense. It's not easy to get to that cell. These things, the coccoliths, which are the plates that you see there, the word coccolith, cocca, C-O-C-C-O, means grain, like a grain of sand or a grain of grass seed or something like that. It means seed or grain, and lith is stone. So these things are stone grains, and the "phore" ending means a thing that carries them. So a coccolithophore is a thing that carries stone grains, and these grains are basically chalk. And that thing, if you were to take that in real life and put it on a dark surface like a table and look at it, you might not see it because it's really small. If your eyes are really good, it might look like a grain of dust has fallen on the table. And those coccoliths on that thing are what are responsible for the building over time of the White Cliffs of Dover.
I'll be darned.
Yeah, and I mean many, 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 many feet of these things built up over a long period of time. Now,
The White Cliffs of Dover is a significantly large-sized formation.
it is indeed. It's like 8 miles long and 400 feet tall.
Something like
It's really big. I've been there. I know what that looked like.
I have seen it. I have sailed by it. I haven't been there, but I've sailed by it.
Yeah, and it has flint.
You can't miss it.
What's that?
You can't miss it.
You cannot miss it. Yeah, it's like, could you miss going by the mountain at Gibraltar? No, it would be kind of hard to miss that. It's just about impossible to miss the White Cliffs of Dover unless you go by at night. And even then, if you were on the deck of a ship at night and the moon was shining, you'd see them.
You'd see, definitely.
Yeah.
They're white.
They're white, yes. And there are other cliffs on the English Channel. There's in the western parts. You find cliffs at Sidmouth that are red, but nevertheless, this thing, the coccolithophore, is responsible for those cliffs. They grow really easily, and you could use the plates for these things, which are calcium carbonate, so they draw down carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere to make them, and you could use them for making concrete.
Basically, they're limestone.
They're limestone. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. That's what they are. And you can draw down a huge amount of carbon dioxide with these things and use that instead of the fossil fuels that are used to make concrete out of limestone.
Oh, concrete uses a lot of fuel.
It uses a lot of fuel. Okay, we should go on, Tom.
Okay.
Our next picture shows a truck in a mine, and this is from Clean Technica.
That makes an awful lot of sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me to be running diesel engines in a mine.
You can't run diesel engines in a mine unless you've got air ventilation. You've got to move the air around. It's just crazy. You need to move that. Even in a warehouse, you've got a problem if you're going to use a forklift, for example, that's running on gasoline or even propane, which is much cleaner. If you're in a warehouse or a factory, you probably want something that's electric. And that was the case when I was a young man working in chemical factories. Okay, what do you have for title for this?
Swedish mining group Boliden is getting electric trucks from Volvo for underground mining operations.
Yeah, you can take the trucks right underground. You don't have to worry about ventilation. Mines and similar campus-based operations are some of the best places for electric vehicles. It's safe to say drivers of heavy electric trucks in such places will not be worried about range anxiety, even with the full loads of heavy rocks. And these things heavy? These things can be heavy.
Well, smaller mines where the overhead is only like 4 feet, they use a kind of shrunken down electric truck.
Yeah.
Called a shuttle car.
Okay.
And historically, they ran on cables.
You know, if anybody wants to find out what that looks like, there's a mine, a coal mine exhibit at the at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago.
I was going to say it's in Chicago. Yep.
Yeah, and it's. I remember seeing it. I looked it up a couple of years ago, and it was still going, but I remember seeing that. Oh man, I was 6 years old. It was 70 years ago, and they had actual mining equipment in a room that was made to look like the interior of a coal mine.
Uh-huh.
And they probably go around and dust it every once in a while because it would be embarrassing to have a coal mine where the coal is covered with dust. Okay.
It wasn't coal dust.
Well, yeah, but you see, the thing is, everything down there is kind of clean. And I mean, it feels like you're in a coal mine, but you don't breathe coal dust.
Yep.
So if you want to find out without endangering yourself, and you go down in an elevator. So,
Oh, do you?
Yeah. Okay, should we go on, Tom?
After I sneeze.
Okay. Don't sneeze into your microphone.
Got an interesting picture here. I'm trying to figure out what it is.
It's a green alternative, a plant-based green color alternative to leather that is not plastic. Well, it is plastic in a sense. This is from Clean Technica.
I was going to say it is plastic in a sense.
Yeah.
Petrochemical industry flattened by sustainable fashion high-tech soy addition.
Yeah, the U.S. biotech company Modern Meadow contacted Clean Technica to introduce its plant-based approach to sustainable fashion with a focus on leather. And so what you're looking at there is their idea of what leather would look like if it were green. I've never seen an animal that color, but you know, we can tolerate that. Teasing from plants the same level of performance and aesthetics as plastics has been a challenge. So that's what this article is about.
They've come up to that challenge very well for the last 50 years.
I think, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, plastic instead of leather is normal nowadays.
Do you remember when they used to talk about Nagas?
You mean like a Naga hide?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Naga hide was introduced, and it was a plastic substitute for leather, and the company that made it talked about what a Naga looked like.
Right.
And you know, that was their advertising.
It was a good joke.
Yeah. Okay, we're up to Wednesday, the 29th of March, and we have an item from Clean Technica and a picture of Montana.
Looks like a gnawing donkey in somebody's front yard.
Well, you know what? I put this picture up. I went out and found this picture because the article didn't have a good picture, and I wanted to have one. And I just want to point out to everybody, that picture is titled Montana. But there's more to Montana than this.
I would say.
Montana is a big place.
But a lot of it's pretty flat.
A lot of it is pretty flat. In the eastern part, Montana is not mountainous. In the western part, it's magnificently mountainous. And what do you have for title for this guy?
Youth versus the state of Montana. Support for fossil fuel companies is unconstitutional. Now, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, it is. And I was blown away when I read this article about what's going on. 16 young Montanans, that's the word they use for them, have sued their state, arguing that its support for fossil fuels violates their due as citizens. In their complaint, they cite the Montana Constitution, which guarantees its residents, quote, the right to a clean and healthful environment, end quote.
How'd they sneak that one in there?
Wow, and that must have been put in a long time ago because Montana's been around for a while, and I would bet that was not put in recently, because if if it had been put on during my lifetime, I think the fossil fuel companies would have bribed everybody in sight to prevent it from going in.
I think you're right.
And, you know, that's just my opinion. I don't want to accuse people of bribery. I just want to say I think they would probably have done it. So, you have
Well, there's a nice picture coming up here of, and I'm going to try and say it, Lauterbrunnen, Switzerland.
Well, you're not far off. It is Lauterbrunnen, and it is in a country that is called Der Schweiz, which means Switzerland in English.
Aha.
And this is from the BBC.
Swiss court case ties human rights to climate change. Well,
Yes.
that's significant.
This is kind of like the article that we just had.
Absolutely.
And as a matter of fact, these two articles are representative of a bunch of articles that ran in the last week about taking various people, organizations to court in order to get some kind of advance in action on climate change. And Vanuatu, for example, has got, and we will talk about this next week, I believe, Vanuatu got the United Nations to accept their suit in the UN. So the UN is going to address this in months to come because of a suit brought by Vanuatu. Everybody knows where Vanuatu is?
Huh?
You know where Vanuatu is?
I should, but not on the top of my head.
Vanuatu is kind of in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, more or less north
of
New Zealand.
Nowhere.
Yeah, and it is an island where I think the average height of the land above seawater is 1 meter. So they're looking at a future that is not very bright.
No, they're in trouble.
Okay, you read the title to this. I should read the synopsis. More than 2,000 women are taking the Swiss government to court, claiming its policy on climate change is violating their right to life and health. The Swiss women, who average an age of 73, say climate change is putting their human rights and their health at risk and even their lives to risk. And yeah, this is serious. This is not a joke.
Interesting concept.
It is an interesting concept, and it's happening there, and it's happening in other places. And so there you have it. So we should go on to our last article, I think.
One more picture. Yep, we're gonna.
We have one more picture, and that is a picture of a stranded asset.
It's stranded, all right. That's
Well,
for sure.
the article is about stranded assets, and I went out and looked for a stranded asset, and by golly, that thing is, it was an asset for somebody at some point, but it is thoroughly stranded. Its propellers are not even underwater. How more? I mean, if that were in the Bay of Fundy, for example, maybe it could be floated off when the next high tide came in. But I don't.
It's going to be a while there before they can float that one off.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a while, and I don't think they're ever going to do it. So what do you have? And by the way, the reason I chose this to be the stranded asset is that the article is talking about oil and gas tankers becoming stranded assets. So I'm just playing a game with words here, but nevertheless, what do you got for a title, Tom?
Oil tankers already sailing into the sunset of peak oil demand.
Yeah, this is from Clean Technica, and I was really kind of blown away by this article. A global shipping logistics contact reached out to share very interesting data point and article with me. Now, the me in this case is the author of this this article, and I don't remember who it was. I think it might have been Zach Shahan, who is the editor of Clean Technica. It seems no one is ordering new oil tankers these days. Well, by no one, he really means almost no one, and I will explain that. No one in the shipping industries appears to be interested in investing in assets that will soon be stranded. So let's talk about that, okay?
Yeah.
He was talking about the very large tankers, you know, the ones that I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, these very large tankers, it's really almost mind-boggling how big they are. We're talking about ships that run into, in some cases, 1 million tons.
They're just basically going across the ocean. They're too big to get near the shore.
Yes, that's right. They don't pull up to a dock and, you know.
They got to offload to a smaller boat.
They go up to a place that they can tie up, where they have a pipe that they can pump things into, and they pump them to stations that are on land. But the thing is, think about aircraft carriers or battleships in the Second World War. The heaviest battleships were approximately 70,000 tons. The United States didn't have any that big, but Japan did. The heaviest were 70,000 tons. And these huge oil tankers can get up to 1 million tons. But the ones that they're talking about are in the range of the 70,000 tons and up. Those are very large tankers.
I would say.
Yeah. Now, during the Second World War, the tankers that the Germans were torpedoing off the coast of the United States were in the neighborhood of 5,000 to 7,000 tons.
Yeah, it was just for resupplying the Navy destroyers.
Yeah, and my father was on a destroyer that traveled along the coast of New Jersey in 1942, I think. And he said the amount of oil that had been lost as tankers sank over the off the coast of New Jersey turned the sand black.
No kidding.
For the whole state, all of it. And he was talking about from what is that that point in the northern tip of New Jersey, just south Sandy Hook, all the way down to Cape May. Everything.
All covered with oil.
Yeah, it was entirely covered with oil. It made the oil spills that you read about small by comparison because of the number of ships that were being torpedoed. And it was an environmental disaster. There's no question about that. Now,
sure.
What's happening here is these big tankers, none of them is scheduled for delivery this year. One of them is scheduled for delivery next year.
So what is it that these guys know?
They know that those ships are not going to last very long. If you think about a tanker that displaces 100,000 tons, you know that thing is going to be expensive. It's going to be very expensive. And in order for a ship maker to make such a thing, it's got to be ordered. And it's got to be ordered by an industry that is going to use it for transportation. And they've got to use it for transportation long enough that they can actually generate a profit out of it. And what's happening here is the people who are have bought such ships in the past don't see a profit coming out of it because they don't think these things are going to last long enough to generate a profit.
Yeah, well.
So that's what's happening. So we're up to the end of the whole thing. We're going to tell everybody to have a remarkably satisfying week. I'll put this picture up just so people can actually read that for themselves, and they'll know that I'm not joking on this. We are at the end of our time. What do you say to that, Tom?
You'll come back down and see us here. You hear?
I knew he was going to say that. Okay, I'm waving goodbye. I know that Tom is waving goodbye. We're hoping you'll come back next week. The cat is
not waving goodbye because he's asleep.
The cat is asleep, but that's okay because cats do that. So we hope you come back next time. Have a lovely week. Have a remarkably satisfying week. Bye-bye.
Adios.